Welcome to Soul Adventure TV, where we explore what may very well be an unprecedented opportunity in humanity's spiritual and physical evolution, and the choices standing before each and every individual to walk on this grand adventure or not. Do we really know who and what we are and what we can choose to be? I'm your host and fellow soul adventurer, Steve Crow.
James Gilliland is an internationally known speaker, author, and contactee. He is the founder of the Self-Mastery Earth Institute, Science, Spirit, and World Transformation Conferences, as well as the ECETI Ranch, which is an internationally known UFO and paranormal hotspot. He is the author of several books including Reunion with Source, Becoming Gods, and his latest book, The Ultimate Soul Journey. James has dedicated his life in service to the awakening and healing of humanity and Earth. After a near-death experience, he left his material life in commercial real estate and began a 34-year spiritual journey, which included the study of most religions, the TIC teachings of the Inner Christ, the Tibetan Foundation, and more. So at this time, it's with great pleasure that I welcome to Soul Adventure TV our guest, James Gilliland. Hey, James.
Great to be on the show again.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. I wanted to get right into I think it's one of the earlier books that you've written that I became aware of, and that is the Becoming Gods and Becoming Gods 2. And I wanted to ask you, when you say gods, what exactly do you mean, and how do you contrast that with the God or the source?
Yeah. Excuse me. The best way I can explain that is if you go back to the teachings of Jesus or any other masters, his prayer was, let them become one as we have become one. And it's actually merging with the one consciousness that encompasses all consciousness and all planes and dimensions throughout the multiverse. So it's a matter of going within and realizing that you're actually a multidimensional being. You're not just a body and a personality, but you're a spirit that has a body and a personality, and that spirit has many, many levels to it, all the way back to the source. So it's just a state of expanded awareness where you go within, and just like Jesus said, the temple is within. All the other masters say go within. The whole universe is within, is what Buddha talks about. And it's a matter of going within and becoming one, with that one consciousness.
That's very interesting. We on this program, we focus a lot on what some people call the ascension or the shift. And I was wondering what your perspective on life might be like after this event or this process occurs.
It's going to be wonderful. We are going to have some major challenges between now and then. And the entire Earth is moving into a new level, you might say, or it's going through a frequency change. So if we're going to stay on Earth, we have to match that frequency. As she ascends, we have to go with her. Some people won't make the journey. They'll check out and start over somewhere else, or they'll finish the process on the next level, depending on their consciousness. But it's what I see, from what I understand from all the prophecies, all the research I've done, and my own inner guidance, is that when we get on the other side of this critical mass or this big shift, things start healing very fast, very rapidly. People are less dense physical. You have more control over your body, over your health, over your well-being. The Earth starts healing very fast, and the star nations, the higher beings, come in and start utilizing their technologies to help the Earth heal very quickly and very gracefully. It's going to heal just as fast. So a lot of the years of destruction and pollution and everything else that we've done is going to be cleaned up much quicker than people can imagine.
Do you foresee that that there will be, for lack of a better word, an old Earth left behind as the new Earth rises in vibration?
You know what? I understand. Back in the 70s, when I was in deep meditation, Babaji was coming to me, and he told me that there'd be a bifurcation, process where there would be two Earths, and I didn't understand it at the time, and I just said, that doesn't make sense. How can there be two Earths? But when I started looking at the many world concept and the other dimensions, and how one could go through a shift and how you can bilocate and be in two places at once. And I started getting all these understandings under my belt. I realized that is a possibility. And in a lot of the classes that we teach here, the Yigong classes and things of that nature, the self-mastery classes, I actually watch people vanish and disappear, and you can see the chair. You can see right through them, and you can see the chair, and then they just disappear and then come back. And so I have a lot of masters that come here from the East that are teachers, and we've been having that happen here on a regular basis, where people are actually phasing out and going from one world to the other, you might say.
Wow, that's tremendous. Um, as a teacher, where do you see humanity being at in its current evolutionary push? I mean, we know that we're challenged. We have to raise our vibration if we want to make this transition. So I'm just basically asking, well, how are we doing?
Boy, that's a tough one. I think, a lot of people say, they talk about, what's going to happen in my future. And I said, well, there's as many futures as there are people here, because we're all making choices day by day. And some people have chosen to totally ignore what's going on and just hang out in mainstream social consciousness. And and they they work in cubicles, and they get on the subway or drive home and go to another cubicle and turn on the TV and go back to the other cubicle. And that's basically their life. Or they go into a room and plug in their computer, although the internet has amazing things on it, like this show. But it's most of them are more focused on the more base things. Survival, sex, and power is what's programmed into mainstream consciousness, and they're not getting into the heart or contemplating the higher consciousness and energy. And most of those people will be kind of caught unaware. They've chosen, not to participate in this. They've chosen not to shift and to live a life that's loving, joyous, and service oriented, and things of that nature. So I think a lot of those groups are going to have some real hard lessons, to shake them out of their comfort zones. And then there's other people that are kind of in the middle. They know something's going on. They feel it. They go, something's happening. I'm not sure what it is. And those people are starting to reach out, and they're starting to play catch up. They're trying to play catch up right now. And then there's other people that have been aware of this since birth, basically, and they know what's happening. They came in to be a part of it, and they're the ground crew, and they're really helping, with this process. And they're paying attention, and they're going with the flow, and they're going to be fine because they have their own inner guidance. They have their own personal God, creator connection, whatever you want to call it. And they're being, they're doing the meditation time or the calm time, and they're in nature a lot. So they're more aware of what's happening. So I just see when the one world collapses, and it will, it's unsustainable. We need to start focusing on another world, the new world coming in, and it won't be the new world order. Those guys are pretty much collapsing in on themselves already. There will be a new world coming, but the new world order is in total disorder right now, and we call them the powers that were. They're totally collapsing in on themselves right now.
Well, in terms of timing, I don't know. Are you one of those who believes in the December 2012 date, or what is your sense of the timing of these events?
It's really interesting. I think that's one of the major critical mass points where a shift happens. I know it's when we're in full alignment, when the sun comes into full alignment with galactic plane, which is going to be a real doozy. The Earth is already in it right now, but when the Earth comes into alignment, when the sun comes into alignment with galactic plane, the sun's already reacting to it. We just got hit with an X-class flare, which we're experiencing, as we speak. We're experiencing the remnants of that. But we had something like 18 or 19 M-class flares in a row, and then now 2 X-class flares. So that the sun is reacting to this shift, and we're moving into a highly energized place in space. So this is physics. This isn't prophecy anymore. This is statistics. But we are seeing an increase in earthquake and volcanic activity, severe weather. All these things are happening right now. We're in the middle of it, and I think the apex of that hits, right around the 21st. So I don't think it's going to be an exact date, and then everybody kind of holds hands and sings "Kumbaya" and it ends. I don't think that's the way it's going
Well,
to
there
happen.
goes my plans. I
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I might be trying that one, but I'm not sure. But the I just think it's individual. People are going to go when they've chosen to go. They have their own contracts and their own agreements that they came to fulfill. And I think some people totally chose to shift this and ride the planet through and help take as many people as they can with them, and other people chose not to. They chose just to come down and work a few things out, and that's all they chose to come here and do.
I heard you on another interview talk about, speaking of cosmic events, a cosmic light wave coming at us from the center of our galaxy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you in more detail about what the source of this light is. Is it starlight? Is it coming from a black hole? Or what is your sense of what is this light made of? Is it just ordinary light?
Well, there's so many things going on. There are so many sources that are coming in. I think it's Susan Renton. Oh God, I'm trying to think of her name. It'll come to me. But she's an astrophysicist, and she talks a lot about this. And she said the Earth is getting hit with over 500 hits a day of cosmic energies coming in, gamma rays, X-rays. We're just getting totally bombarded right now. There's a crazy Susan Joy Renison is her name, but yeah, but there's a huge, looks like a serpent energy going around the planet at the equator right now. And NASA doesn't even know what this is, and it's cutting off the GPSs and having a lot of trouble with the satellites because of this. The rattlesnake prophecies of the Cherokee talk about this huge serpent rope or energy that's moving out, and it goes through the Pleiades, the Orion Council, or the Orion system, and then spins around and comes back in and hits Earth. So we are getting hit by so many different things, and also these huge magnetic waves that were coming into alignment with galactic core or galactic plane. Everybody has a different name for it. So it's a combination of things that are going on, and each one of them is just a huge influx of energy. And if you study semantics, whenever a big burst of energy comes into the planet, everything has to adapt and change and match that frequency or find equilibrium.
Yeah,
So
speaking of that, I think you have mentioned in that prior interview that the effect of that massive energy wave upon the human body would be one of
yes.
transmutation, and I was wondering if you could go into that in a little bit more detail.
Well, on a physical level, our DNA lines all have an attribute. And if you look at the DNA of lamas and yogis that have engaged in a lot of spiritual practices, they've gone through DNA changes. It's actually measurable. And the sun itself is actually altering our DNA. And when these lines open up, one of the lines is telepathy. Another line, when it gets activated, is the ability to see forward or backward in time. And there's another line that activates where you can do, bilocation and teleportation and things like that. Another DNA line is the salamander gene, where you can actually regrow a new arm, and it's an incredible healing ability and this, the scientists used to call this junk DNA, and now they're finding out it's not junk. It's just not activated. But all of that's being activated, and right now, so that's one level. And when these waves hit us, it affects our bioelectric fields around the body. Okay, some people will get really tired and lethargic, and they'll be achy everywhere, and just want to sleep. Other people get really excited by it, and they might have emotional outbursts, or old wounds and traumas will surface, for them to deal with. And everybody's different, and it's a waveform. So you have a high and a low. You get really high with it, and then you have a crash. You get really low as you're processing, but eventually you'll find equilibrium in that. As we go through this process. But it's very interesting the way people are reacting. You can see these solar flares are tied directly into social, economic, and physical earth changes, and that's a new science that actually I was talking about in 1982. And
Hmm.
everybody laughed at it and said I was crazy. But I was talking about the Andromedans and the triangle ships and everything else back then too. So, and now they're here.
Yeah, you gave us a beautiful description of what we are in terms of, as contrasted with our physical bodies, what we are in essence. And I'd like to explore that in a little bit more detail. The teachings that I've been exposed to say that our true selves are kind of like sparks from a much larger flame of
Mm-hmm.
cosmic divine energy called God. But
Yes.
I've also heard that our soul, in order to incarnate here on Earth in 3D reality, actually has to further subdivide itself, and only a sliver of our true self, our true, I don't know, oversoul, if you will, travels with
Mhm.
us here. And then when you add in parallel realities, multi-universes, and so on, the question that I want to ask is, how many versions of James are there?
Yeah, yeah,
you
I've
know,
always asked that myself. I tell you, I went through a real shakeup in a way. It was kind of a struggle because when I was going through the dimensions, I connected with my soul and connected with this being. And he's saying, "I'm your soul," and I said, "Okay, well, I'm just an incarnation of this soul." He decided to come down here and project his energy down here into a new body. So I was fine with that. And then another being showed up, and he says, "I'm your Christ self," you might say, or on another dimension. And so he shows up, and his name's Tassamara. And so I said, oh, great, and so I'm kind of going through an identity crisis here, because this guy's saying, so I accepted that. Okay, maybe I'm an aspect of this soul that sent down here to the earth. And then I went up and I connected with Ezekiel, this other being that's on the seventh dimensional being, this fully realized God being. And he's saying, "You're my hands and feet," So I'm having a total identity crisis with all these experiences, saying, "What is going on here? Who am I? What's this all about?" And then Ezekiel told me it's all you, you know. And so I did the wraparound where I realized that identity isn't even important anymore, and that when you merge with the source, the one consciousness that encompasses all consciousness, like the teachings of Buddha, the whole universe is within. So each one of those little slivers, you might say, is a hologram. It's a fractal of the whole. And that spark can reignite and become the full flame if we do our practices, but we can't just say we are. We have to, it's something we have to. I always say there's a knowing, and then there's a believing, and then there's a realizing. So
that's
we can
wise.
know it, and then
Yes.
we can believe in it, but that's still not enough. You have to totally realize it, and then you own it.
A source I trust says thinking is not knowing. Knowing is knowing. Thinking is just your mind, going. But
Yeah,
to
yeah,
know is something quite different. Uh,
exactly.
on a karmic level, how many of these soul versions do you think we're directly responsible for? Are those other versions of ourselves, if we think about different timelines or parallel realities, uh,
Yeah.
are we responsible for those, or are we only responsible for this focus?
Um, I see the word responsible as just the ability to respond.
Hmm.
And so I don't see it as a burden or anything else, but I know I had to pick up one of my past lives, which was this Viking warrior, and he had a big broad axe and would lay to waste whole villages. And so he had this incredible fearlessness and courage and everything else, but it was created from an experience where his whole family was killed. And so there's a lot of rage and anger that created that reality. So I actually had to pick that up, and I had to bring the courage back, but clear up the wounds and the traumas and things like that, and bring it all back into oneness. So it's interesting. I just say we're responsible for what's in front of us, and how we respond to what's in front of us is individual. One person can respond as a victim, another one will respond to it as a god, so it just depends on what level you're going to respond to these experiences. But if you keep seeing the one in everything, and you hold that unity consciousness, and focus on love and joy and bliss, that's the ultimate power in the universe. That's the source itself. And if you channel that into these situations, you're the one in control, basically.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with someone. I can't remember who it was, or perhaps it was something that I read, but it had to do with the formation or how parallel universes or new timelines are created. And basically, what this person was saying was that anytime we make a choice, the choices that we don't make are actually create a different timeline
Uh-huh.
where those get played out. Does that resonate with your experiences, or do you have a different viewpoint on how and when parallel realities or timelines are created?
Well, that's a tough one. That's kind of down in the psychic level, it seems like.
Mm,
But it seems to me that every choice you make sets a journey, sets a momentum, whatever you want to call it, a forward momentum. And so I think the choices you don't make were just possibilities, and they probably just come to a dead end. If you once you make a choice and you go off in this journey, those other ones are probably just like a dead end. That would be my version of it. But I'm not infallible. It's I'm
so
not sure.
how do you see, how did these if they do indeed exist, these parallel realities or multiple timelines, how did they come about? If it's not from our choices, then what's going on?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think these timelines. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around this because when you get into the higher levels, there is no time.
Exactly,
You can,
right.
yeah, you can go forward or backward anywhere along the wheel, you might say. And so on that level, that's kind of where my head's at, where there is no time, and I can go back and forth and clear these things and work on those levels.
Mm.
I don't think we're locked into any timeline here other than what we agree to or what we believe. But there is a lot of momentum, when you have 7 billion people, if you have 7 billion lemmings going off a cliff and you're the guy in the flow, trying to go against the flow, it's you may go off the cliff with them. It's not that easy to overcome that amount. But I love the saying, one on the side of God is the majority, so you can reach up and get some help and bring that into the equation and totally change that reality. So it's kind of interesting looking at that. A good example is that when I was in Santa Cruz, California, I had all these visions, and a lot of them happened, including the big earthquake down there and things like that. And I was trying to tell people about it. Look, we have to get busy. We have to start getting groups and get help. And so a lot of people had visions of San Francisco just getting obliterated,
Mm.
completely. So many psychics saw that. And that was what was on the books. That was on the books to happen. And I think enough people got together. And I also saw some Andromedan ships that appeared that flew down the fault line. We're sending a green beam of energy into the fault line, which is another divine intervention program. So a combination of the people asking and other people hearing and doing their part, and all these interactions can always change, these realities, or actually postpone them, you might say. So it's yeah, it's tricky, to they weren't wrong. The people that were seeing that weren't wrong. They saw a timeline or a possibility that was probably in the 70 or 80% realm, and they took it down to where it didn't happen, at all.
James, you've talked about three universal principles. The first one being love God with all your heart. The second one, honor each individual as a unique expression of God. And finally, behave as if the God in all life matters. And
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about each point and how these, perhaps how these points were delivered to you?
Mhm.
Because
Uh,
they're moving. They're quite.
yeah, yeah. To me, I always tell people when I say love God with all your heart, I'm not talking about a little old man with a beard, up in the heavens. That's man's image, and there's over 11,000 offshoots of Christianity out there, and each has the same Bible and images, and then you have all these other religions. It's just crazy how many there are. But we have to go and ask who created that. Well, whenever you have a name or an image or you've got a creation there, so you have to say where'd that come from. And I always tell people, if a little old man appears with you a beard and says, "I'm God," just say, "I want to talk to your mom." So and so it's kind of interesting because we all think that it's always masculine and it's always but you take it back to the formless state, and I just see the source as the wellspring from which all life came forth, and that's my image of it. It's more of a consciousness and an energy, and it's not, and even it has two aspects to it. It's nothing and everything at the same time, which is hard for people to wrap their heads around. So but we need to get a new image of God, and let go of the old wrathful God images. That was a historical thing that happened in the past that I wrote about, and it wasn't God that was pulling all those stunts. In the Old Testament, it was another being. But that's it. With Christianity, they're split because they have this jealous, wrathful God that's basically a genocidal maniac, destroying village after village and bashing kids' heads out on rocks and killing all the animals and everything else. And then in the New Testament, you have this all-loving, all-forgiving God, which I would rather hang out with that guy, But you have to ask, well, who created them, and take it one step further. But and so it's really important to get an image of God. I focus on just that love and joy and bliss, and focus on those energies. One of the Tibetan lamas I studied with, he said that there's so few Christed beings or enlightened beings on the planet because it's so damn simple. And he said, you focus on love and joy and bliss until you become it. And he goes, that you're closest to the source when you're in bliss. But and that's a really simple teaching, a very powerful one. But that's the first part. If you're going to love God, it'd be a good idea to know what God is, and that kind of get a little bigger image of it. And then see, what was it? Love God with all your heart.
Honor each individual.
Honor each individual as a unique expression of God. So that goes back to the big cosmic joke is you can't separate yourself from omnipresence. And you can be a body and a personality and think you're separate, but you're not. You're still in the field of unity, that unique, unified field. You're still part of that, and which is the source. So if God is omnipresent, how do you separate yourself from God? And if you see the God in everyone and behave accordingly, then we'll have peace. We'll have abundance. We'll have all these wonderful things coming in. Once we remember who we are, and that the Creator is omnipresent within all creation. So that was another powerful premise that was given to me. And then again, seeing the Creator in all creation, again, all creation is not separate from omnipresence either. Because I know people try to separate the rock and the tree and, the plants, everything, from nature. They go, no, that's created. You can't. That's created. We can do whatever we want with it. And that's one of the problems we're having on the planet right now, because we aren't acting respectfully in nature. We aren't just taking what we need and maintaining the balance, and things like that. We're just totally raping the oceans, the forests, and polluting them and everything else, because we've dishonored that concept, of honoring creation too. It's all, again, it's omnipresent. The Creator's omnipresent within all creation. So it's a good way of being in denial, and a good way to rape and pillage the planet and make a lot of money, and be totally greedy, but to separate the two. And that's why the separation is so strong, because people benefit from it, and they're going to choose a belief that benefits them.
Yeah, I particularly resonate to the second point, because it reminds me of another saying that I heard, which was, you can't hold yourself in the light while you insist that your brother and sister remain in darkness. That we're all part of that unity that you spoke of, and
Yeah.
and once you accept that there's divine love and divine creation in each and every thing and every one, it sure makes it harder to take advantage and, molest them and destroy them once you wrap your head around that, because you're in essence doing it to yourself, for one
Yeah.
thing, you know.
And what's unfortunate is we do have a society based on competition and separation, and it goes all the way up to the top. And the further you go up the food chain, the more separate things are, the more they do the division program. And it's sad, because, and that's the problem we have. We have the 1%, doing their thing, and we have their minions down below, doing their program. But again, one of the masters, I love what he said. He said, now you may not believe in love and joy and bliss and unity consciousness. He goes, but that might not be their truth, and they're not operating from that same. So you have to realize that. Just say, look, you can hold your own focus, but at the same time, you have to realize there are people out there that are operating from a different truth.
Right, and that's really just part of being of loving God, and being of love is that non-judgmental acceptance, I guess you could say, right? There at the ECETI Ranch, and perhaps you should remind us just what ECETI stands for. You've had some remarkable contact experiences there,
Yeah.
to say the least. One thing I'd like to clarify is, speaking of your direct ET contact experiences, your face-to-face experiences, have these occurred while you're in some sort of meditative state, or did they actually happen when you're in your normal awake, state of mind?
Both. Both. It's they really wanted me to focus on more of the spiritual side of things, because these beings are very spiritually and technologically advanced beings, and they're telepathic in nature, and it's much easier to communicate and have contact through those measures. The more physical they become, the more danger it puts us in on the ground, due to other forces out there. So they kind of, but in the beginning it was face to face, and it was very physical, and then I had a lot of interdimensional experiences after that with different groups, some fifth and sixth and seventh dimensional groups. So it's interesting, but they really want us to focus more on the heart and feeling, and develop our sacred senses, clairvoyancy, clairsentience, and clairaudience, and things of that nature, and rise to the occasion versus them having to come down and babysit us all the time and create a big mess, when they do land, because it does create a big mess when they do land.
Which ET groups have you been in contact with?
I'd say the major group are the Palladians, and there's a lot of controversy around that. I know the Meyer group keeps saying that there are no Palladians, that he made that up, and they're really Plagiarians. But unfortunately for him, all the ancient cultures talk about the Palladians. Even the Mayans say that they got their calendar from the Palladians. And if you go to the Philippines or talk to any of the indigenous people there, they all, the Native Americans, they point to the Pleiades, and they said those are our ancestors. So those are the sky gods, or the sky people, or the star nations, they refer to them as. But so there's a long history, in that program. But when you want to create an exclusive and capitalize on the exclusive, you try to close out, everything else, unfortunately.
And you've also mentioned the Arcturians, I believe. Were they the feline based?
No, those were Syrian actually, but
Syrian, okay.
they're all over the place. They're in the motherships. They're the benevolent protectors. In India, they called them Narsringa, which means the benevolent protectors, and in Egypt they call them Sekhmet. And if you go to Egypt and you see the statues of Sekhmet, she's smiling. She has this benevolent smile on her, and she's very loving. And it's not this foreboding image at all, because these beings were very enlightened beings, and they're fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensional beings, and so they've been around for a long time. The seventh dimensional beings, they call them the protectors of the gods. They're the ones that kind of keep an eye on things for them. But they come down here. They've been seen throughout history, and actually the Dome of the Rock footage was a feline group that did that.
Why are the ETs so interested in number one us and in this particular period of time?
Mhm.
Does it impact them somehow too? Whatever's going on here?
Yeah, it does. Those are really good questions. One, the Pleiadians have more stock in the Earth than any other group, and they're the terraformers. They have did a lot of genetic tinkering here with the plants and the animals, even humans, and they set up the first major colonies that we can remember, which were Atlantis, Lemuria. So there was other groups that came here. There was the Ryan group from the Ryan Counts of Light was here. The Andromedans were here. I think some Arcturians were here. There's a whole group of other beings that were coming and going, and but they were the first major colonies. So because of universal law, they've had meetings and they've kind of passed the scepter to the Pleiadians. So they're the main group that's in charge right now because they have kind of a karmic connection and also a more genetic stock here than anybody else. And so they're kind of taking the helm right now, but they're with a lot of other groups that are coming in to help Earth in its transition. And for as far as the second question, we are in this huge transitional phase right now, and where the entire Earth is ascending to the next level, and they're kind of caretakers and helping that process. They're birthing that process along, and they really want to restore the planet and actually restore the consciousness here and bring it up to fifth dimensional consciousness again, which it once was, a long time ago.
Well, speaking of that, I take it the Palladians first did the DNA manipulation here on Earth, what was their intent? What was their goal with that manipulation?
Well, there was another group, and this is where it gets kind of fuzzy. I'm not exactly sure where this other group came from in very, very ancient times, and people call them the Anunnaki. And they did a lot of manipulation, a lot of DNA manipulation, and they were here for different reasons. They were here because their planet was dying, and they needed to put gold into their atmosphere. My understanding about the Anunnaki is that it's nothing to fear. I mean, a race, that's been snorting gold dust for 450,000 years is probably pretty enlightened by now, So they, I don't think there's anything to fear there. I think they're extremely advanced beings, and they're not really here to take anything. They might bag some gold on their way through, but who knows?
Yeah,
But go ahead.
Dolores Cannon talks about, just as you brought up, two groups, uh, and that the Anunnaki were this second group, the same people that Zechariah Sitchin talks about in the Sumerian translations, that kind of at that time diverted the original plan and apparently wanted people to mine gold from them. At least that's what
Hmm.
what Dolores's information is.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, it's been going on for 600 million years that I
yeah,
know of.
yeah.
So it's we've had people coming and going and cataclysms and meteor strikes and pole shifts and things of that nature. So our last memories of all that happening, they're not even memories, but the last stone writings and whatever else we have were the big pole shift, which was the Atlantis and Lemurian epoch. We've had some other smaller shifts since then, but the big event, was the biblical floods and all the other things happened around that time.
So in any case, it appears that our eventual state will be rejoining our galactic family
Hmm.
once we are at a sufficient vibration. Does that sound right to you?
Exactly, exactly. It's so important to realize, a lot of the star nations, well, they get a bad rap because everybody, is saying they're channeling them and they're connected to them, and they are extremely advanced, loving beings, and so automatically they think they're going to be taken care of. But it doesn't work that way. They go, oh, they're going to beam me up, and I'll max out my credit cards, and I don't have to take responsibility for anything here, and so it just doesn't work that way, because that would be an extreme disempowerment and interfering with your sole purpose and things like that. So it's real important that we need to rise to the occasion. We need to do our work here, as the hands and feet of the ground crew, and they're helping us. They're energetically helping us through consciousness and the energy grids and things like that, and kind of watching over us and inspiring us. They're working more on those levels, but we need to do the work down here, and they're working with a lot of people right now to help change the planet around. So it's going to get real interesting, because no matter what happens, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It can't be stopped. The shift can't be stopped. It's just, are we going to do it gracefully and flow with these changes and rise to the occasion, or are we going to fight and resist it, and then have that experience, have the reactions from that experience?
Well, for those that are open to the ascension experience, the shift, how do you think that they will experience that? Um, would it be merely like going to sleep and waking up someplace new, or well, what is your impression?
Boy, I think again, my experience when I had my near death experience, I imagine that would be similar to an ascension experience. And but I think you can ascend levels. You don't have to go all the way back to the source, but you just shift into the next level, and that happens here on a regular basis. Like I was saying, we have people phasing out, and I'll walk up to people after a deep meditation, and there'll be like 8 or 9 people in the field. I'll walk right up to them, and they're looking at me, and they don't even see me. And I say, "Hey, how's it going?" And all of a sudden, they all jump out of their shoes. And so, although I'm just phased out a little bit to where they're not aware of me being there, I'm fully aware of them. But I'm actually functioning on a different level, and I'm fully aware of them. It's kind of funny watching that when it happens, but and that's kind of the way I see it. A lot of people may not even know. They might fall asleep or do a long meditation, or they get up to that critical mass point and just do the shift and end up staying there. And I believe there's many worlds all around us. You've got all the because on the vortex here, the veils collapse here at the vortex, and so it's very easy to experience the nature kingdom, the ascended masters, the angelic kingdom, or the ultra dimensionals. It's because the energies here are so high, it's very easy to access those, and everybody's different. Some people are really on a soul level, they're really connected to the nature kingdom, the nature spirits. Some people are connected to the ascended masters, and some people are connected to the off-worlders. But when we get the big picture, we realize it's all connected, and humanity is the one that's disconnected.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most of humanity doesn't understand that.
Once the ascension event occurs, it's kind of my personal impression that it's not necessarily that it's all rest and relaxation and rejuvenation. That there's actually going to be, I don't want to use the term jobs, but there's going to be
Hmm.
activities,
Oh
and
yeah.
one of them that I think is very important is continuing spiritual and perhaps even practical education. Um, and what I'm kind of thinking about is, if there might be a true campus of higher learning, if you will, or maybe
Hmm.
many of those, much like the ECETI Ranch. Do you see that kind of education, that kind of spiritual development continuing past the Ascension event?
Definitely. I think, people may ascend into the fourth dimension or even the fifth dimension, but there's quite a few dimensions beyond that. And I know a lot of people are actually going to school, and some people remember and some people don't remember, because when they go to sleep, they're actually out of body, and they'll come back and they'll, God, I was working last night. I'm tired, I don't know why. And they'll remember, they might have been in the astral level, or helping other people, or going to school or things like that. So a lot of that's already going on. We're just not aware of it.
So, James, is there anything coming up that you'd like to promote?
Yeah, we got Neil Kramer coming up this August. People can shoot us an email, towards the end of August if they want to see that. We're in the process of working on that. We've just finished a conference here, and we have some amazing DVDs. We had Anelia Benz here, and Tian Jia, who teaches Tiangong. She's a master teacher from the East, was here, gave some just incredible initiation energy, and did some workshops. Uh, Neil Kramer was here. We have him on DVD. Myself, I gave a presentation and talked about all the different orbs and other dimensions, and showed the craft all over the world appearing. Oh God, Jason Verbelli was here talking about fieldless energy technology. John Kelly was here. He does reverse speech, but he's been the main investigator out here in the field every night filming these ships. And we have amazing footage on the ECETI Stargate YouTube page. So if you just go to YouTube and type in ECETI Stargate, you can see a lot of the footage. And this is all recent footage on there. So that's one. I know I'm forgetting a couple people. I should have had the list in front of me. I didn't think of it. But you can go to the website and check it out. You can go to eceti.org or send us an email if you're interested. We just finished rendering the DVDs, so they should be ready and on the on the shelves in probably just a couple days. But oh boy, I'm trying to. Oh, Brooks Agnew was here also, and he did a talk, and we did a talk about sovereign law. And we had a guy here. So we covered the whole gamut, up to the sovereignty movement, to UFOs, to the high spiritual teachings. We had a really nice balanced group of people here. So it was quite a conference. And Renato Longato was here too, as well. So he gave a really good dissertation.
And I understand that people can sign up to visit the ranch in between these conferences, that you're open to having guests who can experience some of these ET flybys for themselves.
Yes, we usually have a pretty good group out here. And if people call us and or shoot us an email, you can just go to the website at eceti.org and shoot us an email. We can set up an appointment. We had to go kind of private, mainly because of a lot of problems with the county and everything. So now people call or make an arrangement, and so it's a private agreement. And we had to start doing things that way just because of some of the heat. We would like to close our doors, but it's been insane. This is my 6th court appearance coming up on the 20th, and we've had 3 judges dismissed, 2 prosecuting attorneys are gone. And they just keep trying. They keep trying over and over, and they have no case or no reason whatsoever to do what they're doing. But it's just harassment and problems of that nature. So it's just unbelievable what's going on. I'm at a point now where I'm just done. I'm just saying, 10 strikes and you're out. Come on, can't keep bringing this up to the plate. Eventually you have to realize it's over. But we'll see where that goes.
Well, the information, thanks to people such as yourself, is out there no matter what they do, and
Oh yeah.
And I think people are waking up to the opportunity.
Oh, we had like probably 100,000 people doing an intention experiment to get it dismissed. So you can imagine the whole courthouse was full of people. So people are just not putting it up with the nonsense anymore, and they're just saying this is ridiculous. So it's just crazy stuff that's going on, but it's to be expected. There's an old saying, the closer you get to the light, the more the demons are going to rear their ugly heads, and that just comes with the territory. And I was surprised I got away with things as long as I did without having more flack, to be honest with you.
Well, James, I want to thank you again for being so generous with your time and sharing your insights and experiences with our audience. As always, we invite our viewers to leave comments, questions, guest recommendations on the Soul Adventure TV website or on Facebook or YouTube. And please feel free to share this video, because this information, as we were just talking about, is meant for everyone. So until next time, this is Steve Crow, your host, wishing you an enlightened, fulfilling soul adventure. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye, James.
Bye. And all planes and dimensions throughout the multiverse. So it's a matter of going within and realizing that you're actually a multidimensional being. You're not just a body and a personality, but you're a spirit that has a body and a personality, and that spirit has many, many levels to it, all the way back to the source. So it's just a state of expanded awareness where you go within, and just like Jesus said, the temple is within. All the other masters say go within. The whole universe is within, is what Buddha talks about. And it's a matter of going within and becoming one, with that one consciousness.
That's very interesting. We on this program, we focus a lot on what some people call the ascension or the shift. And I was wondering what your perspective on life might be like after this event or this process occurs.
It's going to be wonderful. We are going to have some major challenges between now and then. And the entire Earth is moving into a new level, you might say, or it's going through a frequency change. So if we're going to stay on Earth, we have to match that frequency. Baba G was coming to me, and he told me that there'd be a bifurcation, process where there would be two Earths, and I didn't understand it at the time, and I just said, that doesn't make sense. How can there be two Earths? But when I started looking at the mini world concept and the other dimensions, and how one could go through a shift, and how you can bilocate and be in two places at once, and I started getting all these understandings under my belt, I realized that is a possibility. And in a lot of the classes that we teach here, the Yigong classes and things of that nature, the self-mastery classes, I actually watch people vanish and disappear, and you can see the chair, you can see right through them, and you can see the chair, and then they just disappear and then come back. And so I have a lot of masters that come here from the East that are teachers, and we've been having that happen here on a regular basis, where people are actually phasing out and going from one world to the other, you might say.
Wow, that's tremendous. As a teacher, where do you see humanity being at in its current evolutionary push? I mean, God's and his latest book, The Ultimate Soul Journey. James has dedicated his life in service to the awakening and healing of humanity and Earth. After a near-death experience, he left his material life in commercial real estate and began a 34-year spiritual journey, which included the study of most religions, the TIC teachings of the Inner Christ, the Tibetan Foundation, and more. So at this time, it's with great pleasure that I welcome to Soul Adventure TV our guest, James Gilliland. Hey, James.
Great to be on the show again.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. I wanted to get right into I think it's one of the earlier books that you've written that I became aware of, and that is the Becoming Gods and Becoming Gods 2. And I wanted to ask you, when you say gods, what exactly do you mean, and how do you contrast that with the God or the source?
Yeah. Excuse me. The best way I can explain that is if you go back to the teachings of Jesus or any other masters, his prayer was, let them become one as we have become one. And it's actually merging with the one consciousness that encompasses all consciousness.
Welcome to Soul Adventure TV, where we explore what may very well be an unprecedented opportunity in humanity's spiritual and physical evolution, and the choices standing before each and every individual to walk on this grand adventure or not. Do we really know who and what we are and what we can choose to be? I'm your host and fellow soul adventurer, Steve Crow.
James Gilliland is an internationally known speaker, author, and contactee. He is the founder of the Self-Mastery Earth Institute, Science, Spirit, and World Transformation Conferences, as well as the ECETI Ranch, which is an internationally known UFO and paranormal hotspot. He is the author of several books, including Reunion with Source, Becoming...
As she ascends, we have to go with her. Some people won't make the journey. They'll check out and start over somewhere else, or they'll finish the process on the next level, depending on their consciousness. But It's what I see. From what I understand from all the prophecies, all the research I've done, and my own inner guidance, is that when we get on the other side of this critical mass or this big shift, things start healing very fast, very rapidly. People are less dense physical. You have more control over your body, over your health, over your well-being. The earth starts healing very fast, and the star nations, the higher beings, come in and start utilizing their technologies to help the earth heal very quickly and very gracefully. It's going to heal just as fast. So a lot of the years of destruction and pollution and everything else that we've done is going to be cleaned up uh, much quicker than people can imagine.
Do you foresee that that there will be, for lack of a better word, an old Earth left behind as the new Earth rises in vibration?
You know what? I understand. In the back in the 70s, when I was in deep meditation,